This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. We are glad to have you with us. Today on the program, a one-on-one with Speaker of the House, Matthew Shepard. We'll talk about a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes at the state capitol, try to get a feel for why it seems to be off to kind of a slow pace compared to previous legislative sessions. There's some good reasons for that. Also, Governor Sarah Sanders naming a new highway commissioner today. We will give you those details and more as we tune into the next edition of Talk Business and Politics Daily. Talk Business and Politics Daily is brought to you by Wright Lindsay Jennings Law Firm, Impact Management Group, and these sponsors.
We proudly deliver reliable, affordable, responsible power across Arkansas. But demand for electricity is strained by the elimination of sources we need for always-on reliability. And adding intermittents like wind and solar cannot replace workhorses like coal and natural gas that we all count on. Power must be balanced for your needs and our mission. Reliable, affordable, responsible. We're the Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas.
Connection. It's the heart of what we do. It's why we work to better the communities where we live and work. It's why we're expanding to get people connected and create digital equity programs that support affordable internet and digital literacy. We're leaders for positive change. From the way we empower our people, clients, and communities to the way we care for our planet. We live our values every day. We're Cox Communications, and we're pleased to connect with you.
Together we can create an Arkansas that places children and families at the very top of the agenda.
We can create the type of Arkansas that we have always imagined.
Arkansas Advocates as an organization is the glue that can put all those families' voices together.
Welcome back to the program. Joining me now, Speaker of the House, Matthew Shepard, serving his third term as Speaker, Republican from El Dorado. Always good to have him on the program. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Speaker.
Thanks for having me, Roby.
All right, it's been a slow start to the session. Everybody seems to kind of be waiting for some big bills to come here. What's your take on the pace of this session, how it's compared to previous ones? Why do you think it's off to a little bit of a slower start?
Well, I would say it's probably a little more of a deliberate start. I think that it's pretty standard for things to kind of ramp up over the course of 3 or 4 weeks. But it does seem like we've had agendas both on the floor and in committees that have been fairly manageable, things where we haven't had to have really a lot of extended meetings. And I think in part, there's a number of factors. I think in part, there's a lot of focus on public safety and education and other things that are high priority items for a number of members and also for the administration. And there's a lot of discussion ongoing about what some of those bills will look like. And so I think from some members' perspective, they're kind of waiting to see what's filed. It may be that some of the things that they're interested in are being addressed in some of these other bills. So I think it's in part a product of those discussions. I think part of it, we have a large number of new members on the House end, 26 members this is their first term in the House. So there's a bit of a learning curve there. And I think wisely for many of them, kind of taking their time in terms of getting bills ready and then getting those filed. So I think it's just a product of all those things. I think actually the way the pace has gone for these first 3 weeks is I think it's productive. I think it's a positive thing. I think it's allowed our committees it's allowed us to kind of ease the new members into the House, kind of help them to get their feet here. But it's also allowed us to have, a good amount of time, both in committee on the floor, to be able to take a look at these bills as they come across.
You know what all of us legislative veterans are secretly crossing our fingers for is that you guys will just get all the appropriations bills done early, and then you won't deal with a whole lot of other business and you'll just get on out of there and we'll all go, yeah, that's great. It's a 60-day session.
Well, I wouldn't hold my breath on that. So, I think that there's going to be a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work that's ongoing. again, I think it's just very deliberate. I think that members are really taking time in the development of their legislation and the bills that they file, and they're wanting to. I think part of it has been a product of what we've seen over the last number of years, as term limits extended out. There's more members that have been here for a longer period of time, and folks are able to kind of pace themselves. They know that you don't necessarily have to have a bill filed the first week or the second week. That there's still a long way to go, and there's going to be plenty of time to take up a number of different bills across the board.
So on the two big bills that we know are in the process, the dialogue you say that's going on, I presume that you are in some of those conversations on an omnibus education bill, an omnibus prison or sentencing reform bill. Do you have any kind of idea of what you think the timing may be of when we will see a first draft publicly for those? Will it be next week? Do you think it will be the week after that?
I think it's really hard to say, because both from the amount of interest, the number of discussions, the number of different ideas that have been floated around, things that are being looked at, and then you have to come together, put something together on paper, and then you have the formal bill drafting process that takes place over at the Bureau, where the lawyers really get involved in terms of making sure terminology is consistent across the code, making sure all that it all fits within existing Arkansas code. So I would say the next couple of weeks, but I wouldn't want to be held to that. I think there's a lot of work that is ongoing, but it is going to take a little bit more time.
And there'll be some fiscal impact studies that'll have to be attached to some of those too, which could also add a little bit more time. Let me ask you this question, and I'll ask you this personally so you can answer it versus what you maybe are hearing from some of the other members. Give me an example of maybe one thing that you think is being negotiated in the education bill that is where there is some give and take going. Just give people kind of a sense of what that negotiation kind of looks like in terms of, hey, I've got a real problem with how much money we're going to allow to follow students to, from one school district to whatever the other option is, or, that's not enough money for pre-K for me. I mean, just give me one example of something that is maybe germane to a conversation you've had where you've seen this negotiation going on, just so people understand.
Well, I don't like to get into confidential discussions on particular pieces of legislation, but I think that some examples that are probably have been, somewhat aired out in the press or in the public, whether it comes to discussions about teacher pay and what that looks like, and what is an increase appropriate? What does that look like? I mean, I understand today we have a couple bills that have just been filed today by some of our colleagues on that. But going back to the summer, obviously that was a big discussion that was had with the previous administration. And so that would be, one example of some kind of the details that you start trying to get into. I think then along the way, the governor has outlined a number of different priorities in her plan that when you drill down on the specifics of any one of those priorities, there's a lot of details that have to be worked out and that need to be worked out. And that's just the legislative process. And so whether it comes with how do we improve literacy rates, how do we make sure that our students are better prepared for the workplace in the future, what does that look like? And then as you alluded to, you've got the kind of the policy side of things and what does all this look like? But then you also have the fiscal discussion that takes place along with it. And of course, this is an important topic. It's a topic that affects us as Arkansans. It affects our families, our students. It's something that's obviously critically important for the success of our state and our students' futures. And so we want to make sure we're taking, giving it due time. And, I touched on earlier, we have a large number of new members here in the House and on the Senate end. And you also have a new administration that, up until November, just a couple months ago, so many folks were in campaign mode, and now you have to make kind of that quick turnaround, and it can always take a little bit more time. So we're going to work through that. I think I mean, I'm not in every discussion that takes place because there's 135 senators and representatives here, plus the administration. A lot of different folks are part of that discussion. So I'm not in every discussion, but I think there's a lot of discussions that are taking place. And to this point, I think those discussions have been very positive. I think it shouldn't be viewed as like there's some kind of friction out there. This is just it's a big issue. It's an important issue. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah. Now, I just wanted you to give that kind of education to some folks, because a lot of people don't see how the sausage gets made, and they don't understand why is this not done on day 1 or day 5 or whatever it might be.
Well, and to add to that, as you know, I mean, you've been around here a long time. There's a lot of pieces of legislation that really don't get looked at and aren't really brought to the forefront till very late in session. When you think about constitutional amendments, you think about tax reduction, you think about the RSA. So those are really big things that historically you bring up later in the session. And so just because we're 3 weeks into session and we haven't filed, I guess nothing's been filled in on public safety. There hasn't been filings there, or there hasn't been a bill on education that has been put together and filed. That doesn't mean that there's not work ongoing, and it also doesn't mean that should indicate that there's problems, or that this is just the legislative process. It just takes time.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. To that point, I'm listening to what everybody is asking for Christmas on education and public safety. And I think we got to always consider healthcare is out there, and because that's a big budget item right there. But the 3 of those things combined make up a huge portion of the state budget. And I can put a pretty high price tag on some of these wishful things that are out there on the list right now. Do you have some concerns about how all this is going to fit in terms of the budget? Do you feel like there's been some conversations even of, look, you could do that, but you're talking $1 billion, or you're looking at, something that just doesn't account for? How do you feel about that in terms of the budgeting process?
Well, I think that again falls in that category of ongoing discussions. But one of the things that I'm really confident about, given my 4.5 years as speaker and my 12 years here in the House, and knowing my colleagues very well and working with them very well, is that whatever we put forth, I think will be conservative, it will be pragmatic, it will be reasonable. And I think that's what you've seen, particularly on the fiscal side of things. I mean, we've been able to pass the largest tax cut in the history of the state, while also building up a catastrophic reserve fund that previously did not exist. And now we've got $1.2 billion in that reserve fund. And then on top of that, we've built up a surplus in excess of $1 billion, and likely we'll have more to add to it. So that's just one of the challenges of legislating. I think that if you go back to previous sessions, particularly with our budget chairs, Representative Jean, Representative Dismay, that when it comes to our fiscal house, that they've always done a very good job of making sure that we're conservative, that we're creating efficiencies in government, that we're providing for the services and providing the services in the best way that we can, but at the same time that we're being very responsible stewards of the public's money. And fortunately, we've been able to give folks back a lot of their hard-earned money in the process.
Representative Dismay probably appreciates you putting him in the House where he started, but he makes me call him senator now. So,
if I called him representative, I was thinking back to that. But Senator Dismay, Representative Jean, but both of them do a great job, and I've enjoyed working with them very closely over the last number of years.
All right. Lastly, David Hake announced as the newest member of the Arkansas Highway Commission. I don't think your time overlapped with him in the House. I think you just missed each other by maybe a term or so. But anyhow, he's a South Arkansas guy. He's from over there around Texarkana area. I think one of the things he mentioned is Highway 82 becoming a 4-lane all the way across. I have to think that you would be supportive of that as well. Are we going to see that in our lifetime?
Well, I hope so. Highway 82, first, congratulations to him on the appointment. Obviously excited to see a South Arkansan on the Highway Commission. And Highway 82 is vitally important to Texarkana, Magnolia, El Dorado, Crossett, Lake Village, all the way across South Arkansas, and even beyond that, just in terms of the connectivity across the Mid-South. And so that's music to my ears. If he's already referencing Highway 82, we've been very fortunate in the past to have 4-lane of 167, which provides great access from Little Rock all the way down through El Dorado to the Louisiana border. So clearly, from a South Arkansas perspective, obviously I welcome that. Look forward to being able to drive on a 4-lane all the way across South Arkansas.
Speaker of the House, Matthew Shepard, we always appreciate you making time for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're back with more right after this. Talk Business and Politics Daily is brought to you by Wright Lindsay Jennings Law Firm, Capital Advisors Group, and these sponsors.
One of the things that I really liked about UAMS College of Health Professions is that they set me up for success. I chose UAMS because I felt like it was a great place to work. My grandmother was diagnosed at UAMS for multiple myeloma, and I felt like it would be a great way to pay back the place that helped my grandmother so much. And that's why I went in the healthcare field in the first place, is to help someone just like they've helped my grandmother.
For your education and healthcare needs, choose UAMS.
This is what we work for. The moments you live for. The joy. The heart. The wonder. At Entergy, we're dedicated to powering each moment. Today and for future generations. So we're leading the way with a cleaner, more reliable power grid to power every day. Because these moments matter. We power life. Entergy.
Well, as mentioned earlier, Governor Sarah Sanders appointed David Hake of Texarkana to the Arkansas Highway Commission. These are very plum appointments. They serve for 10 years. They're one of the bigger appointments and more influential appointments that a governor gets to make. David Hake is a former Republican state representative from Texarkana, and he replaces former Speaker of the House, Robert Moore, a Democrat from Arkansas City, who is finished with his 10-year term. He was appointed by Governor Mike Beebe back in the day. So with all of that, it's a lot to take in, and that's a big move there for the power shift from Southeast Arkansas over to Southwest Arkansas, but he'll do a good job of representing all of South Arkansas. I'm quite certain of that. This weekend on our television program, we are going to sit down with Senator Jonathan Dismang. He is the Joint Budget Co-Chair, and he's got a lot to say about how things are maybe going to fit into place with all of these big ticket items, as well as potential tax cuts. Misty Orpin from Common Ground, Arkansas, joins us to talk a lot about what's happening in the legislature as well. And Representative Vivian Flowers, Democrat of Pine Bluff, talks about the Democrats' education plan that they rolled out late Thursday. All of this and more on this weekend's edition of Talk Business and Politics and Capitol View. So tune in. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you next time.